Hey, everybody, welcome to a very special emergency edition of the Deep Dive podcast presented by Queen Anne Beer Hall. We're doing this because, yesterday, RJ, just 2 hours before the Firebirds game was about to start, while I was in Coachella Valley, we got the news that the Seattle Kraken called up both Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton. They're now with the club in Colorado, and we just got the news that they are going to play tonight. Ryan Winterton making his NHL debut, Shane Wright coming back and joining the Seattle Kraken. And so, RJ, this is big, giant news for this organization. We got to talk about it. The reason why this appears to be happening is because Jordan Eberle yesterday during practice was cut by a skate blade in his quad, I believe. And it sounds like a fairly serious injury. We still don't totally know the depths of what that injury is, but he's going to miss time. He's certainly missing tonight, so it necessitated a call up. And then on top of that, it's in Jeff Baker's article breaking all this news yesterday, said that there was a second Kraken player that was dealing with some sort of injury. We believe today, based on him skating with the other scratches, we think that is Pierre Bellemare, just because, look, he blocked some shots in Arizona and was kind of limping around on the ice when that happened. It seemed like he was going to be the guy. He's there skating with the scratches this morning, so that opened up that second spot. Here they are, RJ. Kraken called up kids. That's not something we had talked about, right? We've been talking for a long time about the idea of them bringing up a John Hayden, maybe helping address the toughness issue in addition to filling any sort of holes that pop up on the roster. And yet the Kraken decided to go in this direction instead.
Yeah, they did. And it's certainly unexpected. I think this caught both of us by surprise quite a bit yesterday, especially you being in Coachella Valley, ready to watch that
Yeah.
Firebirds game. And you hadn't even been in the building for 5 minutes before you see that Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton are on their way to Colorado. So you didn't get a chance to actually see them play last night. And you did get to talk to Dan Bilesma about it a little bit, and we
Yeah.
can get into that later. But yeah, unexpected move for the Kraken. I mean, certainly something different, as opposed to maybe calling up a John Hayden or maybe a Cole Lind. They are leaning fully into the youth and into the skill, and it's going to be on display as soon as tonight against Colorado.
Yeah, so do you think they're doing this for the spark that youth might bring in, right? Maybe just some speed, or certainly from a skill perspective. Look, these guys are both on tears right now at the AHL level. You look at what Shane Wright's been able to do, got 4 goals. You look at Ryan Winterton, 3 goals. He had a nice 3-game goal streak. He scored 5 points over that time, really coming into his own. Dan Bilesma talked about that last night, said they were players that were really starting to lead the way for the Firebirds. He specifically called out their game against San Jose as those guys, just being the guys in that game for the Firebirds. Do you think this is because they want to go a little bit more of a skill route? They need a spark offensively, the Kraken, so they went ahead and called up these guys?
I do think that's the reason. And at first, when we didn't know the Eberle news, because the Eberle news dropped maybe about an hour after the initial call
Yes.
ups, at first I thought, okay, what are you doing here? It seemed like a desperation move. Like after a couple big losses, you try and create a spark here, potentially at the risk of Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton's development. But now it does make a little bit more sense with the context of Eberle being out. I think if you have Eberle out of the lineup, you are really hurting for skill in the top six. You are really hurting for guys who can finish, who can score. You can call up a John Hayden. He plays the game that he plays, but he's not going to be a top six forward for you. That's just not his game. And I think you are going to be lacking there, especially against two teams like Colorado and Edmonton, who you now have to play twice coming up.
Yes. All right, let's move on. We know they're both going to play tonight, RJ. How do you think the lineup looks with both of these players in the lineup, especially because, look, we had just talked about after the Arizona game, we were asked about Shane Wright, the potential of him being called up because he was playing so well. I know you kind of stuck to your thing of leave him down there. I was a little bit more open to the idea of him coming up if a center roster spot opened up. Unfortunately, it does appear that is the case now with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare being out. I'm still of the opinion Shane Wright has to play center, just given his style, the way he focuses on defense, all that stuff. He's got to be a center. Do you think he just fills Bellemare's spot on the fourth line, or do you think maybe we see something a little higher up in the lineup and maybe a Yanni Gourde flexes over to wing or something like that?
I think we probably see the fourth line kind of deployment for Shane Wright. I don't think Dave Haxtell wants to put too much on his plate right away. We still don't know what the line rushes are for morning skate today, or what the Kraken are looking at doing tonight. Dave Haxtell kind of notoriously cards close to his vest, on this kind of thing. So I don't know that we'll know really before warmups, but I would expect probably more of a fourth line deployment. I would hope for maybe a third line type deployment. I know in the preseason and in the past, the Kraken have kind of bumped Yanni Gord out to wing, put Shane Wright at center on that line. I would love to see a Gord Wright Bjorkstrand line. I would like to see him in that kind of position to succeed, where he can play solid defensively. He's got Yanni Gord to back him up, but also he has some scoring potential there on that line. And with Bjorkstrand, guys he can distribute the puck to as well.
Yeah, exactly. I could see him just deployed on the fourth line, and to be honest, I would be okay with that, right? Shane Wright, we know what he is known for, and that is that defense. Yes, he's working on being more aggressive with the puck, being more aggressive in the offensive zone. But given the nature of this call-up, it being so last minute, I mean, it's going to be barely be 24 hours from the time of him stepping on a plane in Coachella Valley and going to go there that he's going to have to be playing in the NHL. It wouldn't surprise me if we just saw him on the fourth line, and I would be okay with that given his skill set. Ryan Winterton, though, this one's kind of all over the place because he's making his NHL debut. He wasn't necessarily a player we thought about as being one of those obvious, certainly early season call-up players from Coachella Valley. Do you think that they would stick him more on a depth, kind of role, just be an energy guy, go out there, try to disrupt, maybe play on the fourth line with Shane? Or do you think they go, look, this is a skilled player. That's his game. We need to maybe work him into maybe a top six role even on the wing?
I mean, a top six role is available now. They're going to have a spot there on the wing, and I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these two go into that spot. I still think you got to play Shane at center, but maybe they do look at him as a wing just for a game or two, given how temporary this move kind of seems, or maybe should be. But Winterton, I mean, he can play center. He can play wing, I think, right? I'm just confirming with you. He can play center, right?
Yeah.
He's a center, but he can play wing. I really don't know. I mean, I haven't watched a whole lot of him in Coachella Valley. I know you're kind of more dialed in on the prospect thing than he is. The thing that stands out to me with Winterton, though, is just how few games he's played really over the last 4 years, even in general, with all the injuries he's dealt with missing the COVID year. It seems like a very quick jump up to the NHL level after only 7 games pro and missing a lot of junior games.
Yeah, but you know what? He was kind of ready for that. You look at him last year with London, easing back in after the injuries that he had the previous seasons, and he played well. During the regular season, though, I felt like it was a lot of just him getting his feet back under him and working through that injury. But once the playoffs started and London went on the run that they went on, he was the guy for them. 21 games in the playoffs for him, 29 points, 13 goals, and he was really just a rock star for them. And then you look at what he was able to do with the Firebirds so far. 5 points in 7 games, but again, those 5 points came in his last 4 games. It was a little bit just get used to everything. Even Bosma talked about their first couple games for Coachella Valley. Everybody was a little out of sorts for them, and then the team started rolling, and he was a big part of that, providing some. I was gonna say secondary scoring, but realistically, it wasn't secondary. He was one of the guys leading the charge when it came to scoring for the Firebirds. I think he's a highly skilled player who, because of COVID hitting right around his draft year and then the injuries that happened after that, he's kind of, unless you're really following Kraken prospects, he's not necessarily somebody that was talked about much just because he wasn't playing to be talked about. And that's changing now. I think he's got a chance to come in and maybe make something, happen here for the Kraken. As with all young players, right? He's maybe a little light still, especially because he's, you look at his listed height is 6'2", but 175. At the NHL level, it's going to be hard for him to have the time and space he's used to having, all that kind of stuff. But he's a really, really skilled player. He can finish. He can set other guys up. I think he has a chance to do something here with the Kraken. How long do you think? Go for it.
Well, you mentioned the build, though, because I think that's important. One thing I noticed over training camp, and I wasn't the only one to notice it, kind of the slight frame and maybe not with that full NHL size yet. With that, if you're Dave Haxtell, kind of impact where you want to play him, whether that's, in a top 6 role where he's, maybe not grinding as much, or in a bottom 6 role. I don't know. Does that impact the equation at all for you?
maybe a little bit. I think I would still go based off of what style of player is he? Who do I think he's going to match up well with? Get him on the ice today, this morning, see who he has any sort of chemistry with. I think that would be more important than trying to pigeonhole him into a certain role just given his size. I mean, look, we were there for dev camp, right? And they talked about all the physical conditioning tests and stuff that they ran at the start of dev camp. Ryan Winterton was at the top of all of them, right? Like if I remember right, like, and that includes the conditioning stuff, but also the strength things. So he is sneaky strong, even though he is kind of lean. I think Ryan Winterton will be able to handle it. And, I'm just trying to think of who he pairs well with. I know we talked about the idea of maybe Shane Wright playing with Yanni Gourde, but if Shane Wright does take on that kind of, shut down fourth line center approach, which I do think would probably be where he's best suited for. I could see Ryan Winterton sliding in well on the Yanni Gourde line. I could see him, Tolvanen, and Yanni Gourde playing really well together. I could see him and Bjorkstrand and Gourde playing really well together. But I do think that if the Kraken are going to bring in Ryan Winterton like this, just for some reason, Yanni Gourde and those two guys playing together is really sticking for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good home for really any young player who's coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a reason we both went to that line, right? It's just because you have those guys like Gourde, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, and they're all reliable, predictable players who can be responsible defensively, make up for any rookie mistakes you might make, and then also provide a bit of a scoring punch. It just makes sense. I certainly expect to maybe see at least one of those guys paired with some element of that line tonight.
Yeah. Do you think this is the other element of them being called up, though, that I find interesting? Because we haven't really heard anything official about Belmar yet. We know that Jordan Eberle, Ron Francis said that he went for an MRI. They were trying to figure out the extent of the damage there. So we certainly don't know a timeline yet on him. That is something that is interesting here, RJ, for the Kraken is, they know better probably than we do how long those guys are going to be out. But from the outside looking in, those are both kind of open-ended, injury situations, right? We know that there's potential damage there on Eberle's side. We technically don't know what's wrong with Belmar. We're still just speculating that it was that blocked shot he had in the second period against Arizona. We don't know anything. Do you think, how long do you think they could be up here? Does them being the call-ups and them being younger guys and them being more offensively minded guys than, say, a John Hayden, in your mind, make you think that maybe this is a more long-term thing for the Kraken, maybe?
I still don't think it's going to be that long-term, but it all depends on the injury situations. If unfortunately the news is really bad for Eberle, that he's going to be out a while, that might kind of force your hand as far as what you have to do, because skill-wise, there's no replacing that with a John Hayden or, really anyone you bring in aside from maybe a trade, but you don't want to be kind of forced into that situation via an injury. So it might last longer. The other element too is Brandon Tanev potentially coming back. He just shed the no contact jersey at morning skate today. He might return to the lineup. I think certainly that would help you replace somebody in the bottom six who can kind of play that energy type role. And, maybe that doesn't bode so well for a Ryan Winterton, but I think it really depends on the injury situation. And then, how they play. If Shane Wright comes out there and looks like the player that we both know that he can be, then he kind of might force the issue and be like, yeah, how do you send this guy down? You don't want to mess with the momentum. I don't know. Dylan, what do you think about this? How temporary is this looking to you?
I originally thought when it came to seeing that Ryan Winterton was called up, and this was again before the Eberle news was available to us, right? I thought, okay, maybe somebody got hurt. They had the roster spots to do this anyway. Maybe they were going to bring up Shane Wright and they just wanted Winterton around, right? Kind of reward him for the effort he's been putting in Coachella Valley. Give him a taste of the NHL lifestyle, have him around for practices, let him start building some confidence and some experience around the NHL team. And then, he can go back down after a couple days kind of thing. But it's a nice kind of, hey, look, we're acknowledging the hard work you're putting in. We're acknowledging what you're doing right now. And just know, we're getting you ready for this. Right. But that was before the Eberle news. Once the Eberle news hit, it's my mind started shifting to, well, you know what? He's playing with a ton of confidence right now. Him and Wright look great together. Maybe there is something to this. Maybe the Kraken really are thinking, hey, we might need somebody here, and we're really looking for a spark offensively. maybe it's time to kind of go with a youth movement approach. Maybe that helps get Matty Beniers going, another young guy on the team, right? You start bringing in a bunch of young guys, see if they can develop chemistry together, whether that's actual chemistry playing on a line together or just chemistry being around each other, right? They can all support each other. They can all get excited for each other. They can all go through that journey together and maybe get something going that way. I'm starting to think that the idea of them going with a Winterton is yeah, maybe it's for that youth movement spark, RJ, and this might be something that they hold on to for more than just a game or two.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to try it given the circumstances. I think the team kind of could use a bit of a spark. We've seen that happen with teams in the past. You get someone in there who's just thrilled to be playing hockey. I mean, heck, we saw it with Ty Karche coming up in the playoffs and his story coming up where not a lot of people expected him to move on to that first line spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He scores a goal and it really kind of gave everyone a jolt. So, that could be the case. So Dylan, I'm curious. The Kraken have made this decision for whatever reason. They've made this decision, whether it's for a spark, whether it's because they feel like they need the skill. They've chosen to go this way and they've leaned into it.
Yeah.
How do they do it right? Like, what things do you want to see out of this that would satisfy you? Like, let's say, do you want to see, like, I want Shane Wright to play at least like 10 minutes tonight, or just, know that he's getting the opportunity? I mean, what kind of things do you want to see?
Well, I think it was important that Shane Wright was the guy that they went to the moment there was a center injury, right? The moment that one of the centers was out, Shane Wright was their guy. I think that's going to send a really strong message to Shane Wright. I think it certainly sends a strong message to the fan base. And so I think that was good. Like I said, I'm okay if he just plays fourth line minutes tonight. I don't think he needs to play 10 plus. I don't think he needs to be put in, certain positions, get power play time, anything like that. I think having him come up, given his specific skill set, given what his strengths are defensively, in this short term, while the Kraken are trying to figure this out, while they're trying to figure out how significant the injuries that they're dealing with are, I would be okay with Shane Wright playing 8 minutes in a fourth line capacity. And, he just kind of tries to shut things down. And again, it's just, hey, here's the NHL. This is the speed. You're going up against a tough team in Colorado. Get your feet wet here for the first time this season and be ready. Winterton is a little bit more interesting because I do feel like if you are going to go through the process of bringing him up and acknowledging the work that he's putting in, you're going to want to put him more so in a position to succeed. And you did mention he hasn't played a ton of hockey these last couple of years, and he's only got 7 games of professional hockey, right, against men under his belt. So I think you are going to have to kind of pick and choose where you insert Ryan Winterton into the lineup a little bit more so than Shane Wright. Shane Wright's a more mature player. He's got a different skill set. He can handle just being thrown in to the fourth line and holding down the fort there. So Winterton, I wonder, if we see him with Yanni. I also wonder if we see him, maybe not play every shift that his line plays too. I could see Winterton ending up with, maybe fourth line minutes despite playing a little higher up in the lineup. And I think that that's okay. He's going to have to adjust to the speed of the NHL, right? That's the one thing I noticed watching back-to-back games, right? These last 2 days, you watch an NHL game, then you go watch an AHL game. The speed is still just the thing that makes those two leagues so different from each other. Just how fast everybody is going, how fast they're all processing, how fast the guys are coming at you when you have that puck on your stick. And so I do think you're going to have to ease Winterton in a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you kind of beat me to it because I was going to say the one thing I wanted to see was Ryan Winterton kind of get the Ty Karche treatment, and not necessarily meaning like easing him in, but you can put him on a top 6 line potentially, with some really skilled players around him that he can work off of. But like you said, not play every shift. And that's what they did with Ty Karche in the playoffs. You look at his ice time, it was still around 11, 12 minutes or so. It wasn't real proper first line ice time, even though he was on the first line. They kind of rotate guys in through there. That's what I'd like to see, whether it's filling Eberle's spot on the second line or, heck, maybe up with a Matty Beniers. I don't know. Kyler Yamamoto's been up there recently. Maybe you kind of switch him and Yamamoto on various shifts and kind of play it that way. But I really want to see him get that opportunity to go out there and try and show his stuff because he is a skill player and, put him in those positions. I guess what I don't want to see is like Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton on playing a fourth line role, getting fourth line minutes.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be the best for them. And hey, look, it's going to be interesting, right? Because this is a game on the road. It's not like Hackstall can like pick and choose certain matchups, right, against his Colorado team. That's going to be something that he's going to have to take into account too when it comes to deploying Ryan Winterton. But I got to think that yes, you pick whatever line Winterton's going to go on, and then whenever that line's going to go out there to start a possession in the offensive zone, you stick Winterton out there, and if it's a defensive zone draw, maybe you don't. It's going to be interesting to watch tonight for sure. But I also think the message to Winterton's got to be just go for it offensively, right? Like just focus on the offensive side of your game. Try to make stuff happen there. Don't kind of try to make him worry too much about stopping Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar tonight or Mikko Rantanen. I don't know that would serve him very well.
Yeah, no, and especially again, given the Kraken don't have last change, if you just stick them together on like a fourth line as two of the players there, and all of a sudden, it's an icing, a D zone draw, and the Avs put out Nathan McKinnon, that's not going to be a good time. So yeah, put him in positions to succeed. Give him that runway, and let's see what he can do with it. I am excited. This is probably the most excited I've been, maybe since the season opener to watch the Kraken play this season.
I'm right there with you, and I think a lot of fans are. So we're going to see tonight. Make sure everybody to join us tonight for the post-game live presented by Flatstick Pub. I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about everything that we see from them tonight and all the, the rest of the situations involving the Kraken right now as well. But I think that's going to do it for this emergency deep dive presented by Queen Anne Beer Hall, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later on tonight.